Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping right into decoding the 24th gene key, from addiction to silence. We are going to explore this absolutely fascinating blueprint that maps out how human consciousness actually evolves, moving all the way from our everyday, anxious, looping thoughts to a state of ultimate, profound peace.
So let me ask you something right out of the gate. Are you addicted to avoiding silence? Now, usually when we hear the word addiction, we picture things like substances or gambling, maybe extreme behaviors. But today, we're going to radically redefine what that word means. What if our absolute biggest, most pervasive addiction isn't to a substance at all, but to our own thoughts? What if we are literally, biologically, addicted to avoiding the empty spaces in our own minds?
All right, to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to map out human consciousness across 3 different frequency bands. Down at the lowest frequency, we have the shadow state, which in this case is addiction. But as we raise our awareness and break free from those low frequencies, we unlock what's called the gift of invention. And finally, at the absolute peak of human evolution, we reach the siddhi, the highest state of realization, which is silence. We're going to trace this exact path together, step by step.
Okay, let's dive into that shadow state first. Addiction, in this context, is actually a biological program wired right into our brains. It's the structural avoidance of what the source material calls our internal sacred wound. You see, in our normal everyday lives, there are these natural pauses, these empty spaces or gaps in our awareness. But instead of just resting in those gaps, we feel this deeply uncomfortable void. And to avoid that emptiness, our brain just frantically generates repetitive, looping thoughts. We're addicted to thinking, basically just to keep ourselves distracted from the silence.
It's literally like a mouse running in a wheel. We think we're making progress, right? We really think we're solving our problems. But neurologically speaking, we're just treading the exact same heavily worn synaptic pathways in our brain. We play out the same relationship dynamics, the same old anxieties, the same internal arguments over and over again. And the crazy part is, we don't even notice that the scenery hasn't changed at all.
Now, if we break down the actual mechanics of this suffering, it's basically a chain reaction. It starts at the densest level, the physical body. Hidden deep within our DNA is this primal sense of separation, that sacred wound. Now, this wound triggers the next layer, the astral body, which is the part of us that governs our emotions and desires. The astral body reacts to the pain of that wound by creating cravings and desires, just trying to escape it. And finally, the mental body kicks in. It senses those emotional cravings and just starts anxiously thinking, frantically trying to invent a strategy to think its way out of the suffering. It's a complete chain reaction of avoidance.
So when that inevitable gap of silence creeps up on us, how do we react? Well, we generally fall into one of 2 traps. The first is repressive behavior. This is when we just freeze up. We numb ourselves to the void entirely. This could look like physical lethargy, emotional apathy, or even deep cynicism, basically just shutting out the magic of life. On the flip side, we have reactive behavior. This is anxious, it's stimulating. This is the person who absolutely cannot sit still, who overworks, who constantly needs to stimulate themselves just to drown out the silence. But really, both are just traps keeping us from evolving.
So how in the world do we break out of this loop? We have to elevate our frequency to the gift level. And there's a brilliant distinction here. If addiction is circular thinking, invention is spiral thinking. Invention isn't just, coming up with a cool new gadget. It is a literal quantum leap in consciousness. Instead of spinning endlessly in the exact same circle, you suddenly jump to a higher octave. The pattern breaks and you spiral upward.
The big question is, how does this kind of invention actually happen? Well, it happens when we finally stop avoiding the gap and we just start resting in it. When you notice that you're caught up in an addictive pattern, this simple act of just recognizing it without any judgment creates a pause. And if you can tolerate that unpredictable, uncomfortable gap without instantly rushing to fill it with a thought or a distraction, something almost magical happens. Deep within the gray matter of your brain, a shift occurs. Completely new, highly efficient synaptic networks open up. You literally mutate your own neural pathways.
To put that into perspective, think about a truly genius tennis player. A highly analytical player is going to study their opponent, right? They'll memorize patterns, they'll plan every single shot logically. But a true genius operates straight from the gap. In the absolute highest pressure moment, they don't follow a logical pattern. They strike with total unpredictability. They hit a shot so completely unexpected that it stuns the opponent, the audience, and sometimes they even surprise themselves. That is true invention. It's born straight from the void, not from the anxious thinking mind.
Now, you absolutely do not have to be a world-class athlete to tap into this. Just think about your own life for a second. When do your absolute best ideas hit you? I guarantee it's rarely when you're anxiously staring at a computer screen trying to force a solution. The gap presents itself in the simplest, most everyday moments. When you're resting, sitting quietly, sleeping, dreaming, or, and this is probably the hardest one for us today, doing absolutely nothing. Seriously, when was the last time you allowed yourself to just do nothing without immediately reaching for your phone to numb the silence?
And as we learn to actually rest in these gaps, they begin to widen. This leads us to the ultimate evolutionary peak. We cross a threshold into the city. Absolute silence. At this stage, the entire tone of our existence changes. This isn't just finding a quiet room to sit in for a while. This is a radical, permanent internal mutation, where the thinking mind simply stops. At this city level, silence is defined as the permanent cessation of the addictive mind. It is the natural state that exists right behind all human awareness. You know, for centuries, people have tried all sorts of techniques to force their thoughts to stop. But you can't force this. True silence only descends when the mind finally realizes its own futility and simply gives up. The internal noise ends, the illusion of separation dissolves, and what remains is a profound union with pure, unadulterated awareness. All those addictive behaviors completely vanish because the illusion of the wound is just gone. From this ultimate perspective of silence, your entire view of reality completely shifts. And there's something really provocative here. Many spiritual traditions focus super heavily on complex concepts like karma and reincarnation, the idea of a soul endlessly cycling through lifetimes to learn and evolve. But from the pure light of this 24th city, even reincarnation is seen as Maya, an illusion. It's really just the ultimate manifestation of the mind's addiction to narrative, to continuity, to time itself. Pure silence reveals that only awareness is actually real. The rest is just a story we keep endlessly repeating to ourselves.
To really anchor this, there's this beautifully grounding analogy. It views life as just a grand stage play. Your physical body, your personality, your daily anxieties, they are all just a genetic costume. A costume that pure consciousness puts on to play a role on the stage of the material world. When a person dies, they don't actually disappear. The actor is merely taking off the costume because their part in the play is done. The pure silence of their true nature remains completely untouched and eternally at rest.
Which brings us to the very end of our journey today, from the frantic spinning of that mental wheel all the way to the profound peace of the void. As you go about your day-to-day, I want you to pay attention to those gaps. Notice your constant urge to fill the silence, and ask yourself, when the looping thoughts finally run out of energy and the show is over, are you ready to take off the costume, let go of the addiction to your own mind, and truly rest in the silence?